Hello and welcome to our webinar on bookings, our new resource planning tool that has just launched in the May 2024 release of Scoro. If you're an existing customer of Scoro and keen to understand what bookings is all about, how you might be able to benefit from it, what it means for your existing workflows, or if you're a potential customer evaluating if Scoro is a good fit, particularly in light of resource planning, then you're in the right place. My name is Helen, and I'll be your host for the next 45 minutes or so. I'm a member of the onboarding team here at Scoro, and I work with clients who are just getting started with Scoro to help them get ready for a successful go live. I know that plenty of my clients who I'm currently working with or have worked with are joining today. Hello and welcome. For those of you who don't know me, hello and welcome. As a bit of background, before I joined Scoro, I used to be a customer of Scoro. I was the co-founder and COO of a web development agency, and I implemented Scoro for my team. And it was so much of a game changer for us that after selling my agency, I decided to join the amazing team here. Talking about the team, I'm joined today by some fabulous co-workers. I have Takia, Kadri, Maggie, and Tella, and they will all be in the background working hard to answer your questions as we go throughout the webinar. Before we kick off, we have two quick polls just to take the pulse of how everyone is currently handling their resourcing. The first thing that we'd really love to know is, what are you currently using to plan your resources so that you know whether you have enough people for the next quarter or enough work for the existing team? So are you using tools or software? It could be Scoro or something else. Are you using spreadsheets, nothing, or something not on the list? See, lots of people are answering. I'll give just a bit more time for everyone to make a choice. And 3, 2, 1. All right. The results are in, and I'm delighted to see that at least half of the people who have answered are using something, so some kind of tool or software. A lot of you using spreadsheets, only a small portion not using anything or something else. I have been in the I don't pile myself previously, and it was, let's say, an interesting part of my business history. Cool, and on to our second quick poll. We'd also really like to know how far in advance are you able to forecast utilization? So are you able to get insight maybe 1 to 2 weeks ahead, a month ahead, up to 3 months, 6 months, or up to a year? Cool. Give everyone just a few more moments to make their choice. Cool. And 3, 2, 1. And the results show that vast majority of, well, the most popular choice is around the 3-month mark. So kind of between the 1 to 3 months kind of mark is probably, oh my goodness, trying to do mental maths, the best part of 50–60%, I think. A third of people only with a very, very short-term view, and even fewer people with a longer-term view. Although, of course, if you're project-based versus retainer-based, and if your projects are shorter, then that might play a part in that. Okay. In terms of our agenda for today, we will chat through a few quick housekeeping items, and then we're going to have an overview of exactly what we mean by resource planning and why it's important. We'll then have our deep dive into bookings and a live demo. I'll tell you about the exciting future plans, so how we'll be making bookings even more powerful later this year. We'll cover how your existing workflows may need to change if you start using bookings on Scoro. And we'll finish up with a quick summary of the key takeaways and ask for your feedback on the webinar. We expect the whole thing will take around 45 minutes, so you will have time for a break before your next meeting. At any point during the webinar, if you have questions, please feel free to ask them in the Q&A tab at the bottom of Zoom. We're not going to have a dedicated Q&A talking section in the webinar because you can ask questions throughout, and all of the team that I mentioned just before will be busy answering them. When we have an answer, it will be posted publicly so that you can see it, and you'll also be able to see answers to questions that other people have asked. If you ask a question that's maybe a bit more specific to your particular business or requires a more detailed response, what we'll do is get in touch with you afterwards. So please don't ask questions anonymously, otherwise we won't know who to get back to. This webinar is being recorded and you'll each get a copy afterwards in the follow-up email that we'll send if you wish to rewatch it or share it with a colleague. And finally, please note that the bookings feature is only available in our Pro and Ultimate plans on Scoro. It's not available in the Essential or the Standard plan. Right, let us start with exactly what we mean by resource planning. Resource planning is the process of scheduling all the resources that you need to complete a project on time and on budget in advance. Your team are likely to be the main resources that you need, and that's what the bookings feature in Scoro really focuses on. And this could include not just planning for any work that you've actually won and need to deliver, but also forecasting for work that you may win and need to deliver. Resource planning enables you to understand individual people's capacity. How busy is Jane this month? As well as the availability of certain skills or departments, how busy our creative team next quarter. And it also helps you to identify the resource needs of each project. Who and what skills do we need to deliver this project? And why is this so important? Your people and their time are your most valuable assets. And by knowing how busy they are or expect to be, you can make more informed hiring decisions. Resource planning helps you to figure out if you need more people or if you need more work for your existing people. You'll be able to better optimize your workloads so that no one has too much or too little, which helps keep your team happy and prevent burnout. Improve revenue forecasting based on the billable utilization rates that you set for your team. You'll be able to more effectively plan your resources to meet those targets. You'll also be able to improve collaboration. So knowing exactly who's doing what and when, it just helps your team to work more smoothly together. And also better control costs by avoiding unnecessary extra costs, such as paid overtime or hiring people you don't need. And of course, this directly feeds back into improving your profitability. Another way that we can think about why resource planning is so important is the consequences of not doing it. If you don't have any visibility of how busy your team will be in the future, then like this truly superb piece of artwork depicts, you cannot see what's coming. I myself have faced the metaphorical unexpected iceberg, and it is not fun. Imagine getting to a critical stage of your project and realizing that a key team member with crucial skills is fully booked for the next 2 weeks. But this can all be avoided by having proper resource planning in place. Let's talk about how we can do that with bookings on Scoro. Bookings come into play in the early stages of the project, and they let you easily reserve your people's time so that you have the right people available at the right time. Your designer at the beginning, your copywriter midway through, your project manager throughout. And this happens before you've even started planning any detailed tasks. For example, we want Jerome to be working 50% of his full-time capacity on the Sandy Dunes campaign in June and July. Bookings will give you a way for deciding who will work on what project and when across the whole company. Bookings on Scoro give you a proactive approach for resource planning, so you don't end up with nasty surprises and double bookings. They are long-term in nature, so you can book people for months or even quarters in advance, which is especially great for retainers or longer projects. They are high level, so you simply specify an amount of time or a percentage that you want someone to work on a project over a time period. They're a really great fit for standardized projects. So that's when you have a bit of a clearer idea of what's and who is needed and when, as opposed to what I used to call stranger danger projects, where you're doing something for the first time and figuring out as you go and you really don't know what's around the corner. They also make replanning easy because they are so high level. So you don't need to replan an entire Gantt chart and a whole set of tasks. If something changes, you can just push the booking forward or transfer it to someone else. Before we jump into our live demo, one important concept that I'd like to address is how bookings on Scoro differ from tasks on Scoro. Bookings help you to plan people and projects. So I need 50% of Jane's time on the new website project in May. In other words, you're reserving someone's time so that they are available when you need them and not double booked on another project. Tasks help you to plan work and outcomes. I need Jane to build these 3 web pages in May. So in other words, you're telling Jane what specifically she needs to do. Bookings do not replace and are not linked to tasks in Scoro, and you still need tasks to tell your team what they need to do. Because I'm a very food-oriented person, I'm going to paint an analogy of this using food. So you can think of bookings like reserving a table at a popular restaurant on a Friday night. The reservation alone is not going to tell your waiter what you want for your starter, your main, and your dessert. But it ensures you'll get in and eat at a time that you want. Giving your order to the waiter for your starter, your main, and your dessert is the equivalent of telling your team what specifically you want them to do. But build these 3 website pages. So a booking reserves the table at the right time, and a task is an order for what specifically you want to be done. Now, for the moment you've all been waiting for, our live demo. And do remember, if you have any questions, pop them in the Q&A tab, and you'll also be able to check out answers to other questions that people have asked as well. Okay. We are going to start off with this example quote that I have prepared. We have some in-house, some line items for in-house work that's needed in time. And you can see that most of these are assigned to roles. And this is because this is a quote. We don't yet know who'll be doing the work. It's too early to tell. Although we have to build an interactive price comparison widget, and that is pretty tricky. Only Alejandro can do that, so we've named him specifically on the quote. I'm now going to convert my quote into a project. The start and end dates have pulled through from the quote, but we can adjust them if we need to. And also, because I am creating this project, I've been listed as a project member. And because we named Alejandro on the quote, he's also a project member. I'm going to click Save. And in 2 clicks, we have created a new project from our quote. We have a bookings tab over here, and a lot of things have happened automatically. So all the project members, myself and Alejandro, have been added. And any roles that we'd named in the quote, so the time that we needed for the designer and the developer, Scoro has created placeholder roles for those services. And these serve to save the time that's needed for the designer and the developer until we've assigned a specific person. You'll note as well that all of the design time has been added together. So even though we have two different line items in the quote for the designer, those have been added into a single booking, because otherwise, if you have a very long quote, this could easily get quite long and cluttered. For Alejandro, the designer and the developer, the three roles or people that were specifically named in the quote, you'll notice that Scoro has created these tentative automatic bookings for them. And that's what we can see in these purple stripes going across here. The total amount of time has been spread out over the project duration. That comes back to the project start and due date that we looked at just a second ago. So in just 2 clicks, we have converted our quote into a project, and we've already got a full set of tentative bookings. By the way, this is such a quick way to provisionally look and see if you have the capacity to take a new project on, even if you haven't definitely won it, but you just want to understand, is it viable? It takes 2 clicks to get that view. The automations that we see here, these tentative bookings, are a really great starting point, but of course they don't reflect reality. And this is where we need the project manager to come in and work their magic. So we can, the next step would be to look at the specific time that this work needs to be done, and also to assign specific people to do the work based on their availability. And this is where the heat map above each person or placeholder comes into play. The heat map shows you how busy someone is based on the other bookings that they've got. We can see for Alejandro, he is 114% booked or overutilized in August, which is why it's gone into red. Let's click on that to see why. We can see that Alejandro has 2 other fixed bookings over this time period for these projects. Were we to add in the 25 hours of tentative work for this project, that would result in him being 114% overutilized based on his individual capacity of, let's say, 8 hours a day or 40 hours a week. Now, if Alejandro is fixed booked onto other projects, that means you can't nab him for your project as much as you might want to. Maybe if your project is a screaming priority for the company, you would need to go and have a conversation and negotiate with the other project managers. But by and large, a fixed booking means that Alejandro is not available. And this is how we can prevent accidentally creating all those conflicts, over a given time period. But what we can see is that Alejandro has plenty of availability in June and July. And maybe his work isn't dependent on someone else. He can start sooner and finish sooner. So what we can do is drag this tentative booking back. And now we can see that this has gone into the green. Alejandro has more than enough capacity to get this done in June and July. So what we can do next is to make this tentative booking a fixed booking. And you will see that this background has turned from the stripy green into the solid green to represent that it's fixed. What we can also see at this stage is that Alejandro has very little extra capacity to take on anything significant over the next quarter. So this is really great insight for your team. If you're working on a pitch or there's a potential project coming up that needs Alejandro, you'll be able to lay those expectations of the client early and say that the project, or at least Alejandro's part in the project, couldn't start until September. Or maybe you start having conversations with other freelancers who've got Alejandro's skill sets. Now let us have a look at the designer placeholder role over here. We have got our tentative booking spanning the project duration, but the design work needs to actually happen in the first 2 months. Above the designer placeholder, we again see this heat map, and I'd like to just take a moment to explain how the calculations for this work, because they're slightly different compared to real people. So if we're looking at a person, their availability is always set based on this individual person, so 8 hours a day, 40 hours a week. With our placeholder roles, it's not possible to set a capacity or an availability for a placeholder, but rather, if you have a role set up called designer, and you have 3 designers in your team, Lisa, John, and Adrian, they each have 40 hours of availability a week. But let's say in a given week, they've all been booked onto some work, which means that they each have a remaining amount of time. Therefore, the capacity for the designer placeholder is the sum total of all of the individual designers' available time. By the way, if you haven't yet set up roles on Scoro because you've not been using them up until now, maybe they haven't been relevant, you'll be able to set up roles as part of setting up bookings so that you can benefit from these placeholders. Right, the next step, now that we've got the timeframes for the design work to take place, is to work out which designer is going to be best placed to take on the work. We can see that there's potentially a problem in July, so let's dig in and explore that a bit more. I'm going to nip into our utilization report. And this will give you an overview via a new option in our drop-down over here, where you can view the whole team's bookings. So you can just see the all bookings or just the fixed bookings. And what I'm going to do is filter this by our designer role. We can see our 2 designers in here, John and Lisa. And I mean, Lisa, we're clearly going to need to sort out July for Lisa because she's overbooked, but we'll come to that later. But for now, John looks like he has more than enough capacity to take on this design work. So what we can do is come back to our project and click on these 3 dots next to the designer and assign this to John. Click yes. We can now double check that the work that we have tentatively assigned to John isn't going to cause him to be overbooked, and we can see that it's not. So again, we can now change this tentative booking into a fixed booking. If I now refresh the utilization report, you'll see that in real time, John's utilization has updated. As I said before, the utilization report is currently the best place to get this overview of the whole team and what everyone's doing. You'll be able to see how utilized each person is and if that is on track with your billable utilization targets. And that all feeds into your revenue forecasting, of course. And it's also where we can optimize the workloads and spot the problems. We can see, for example, that both Kevin and Lisa are overbooked in future months. Let's hover over Kevin and see why. We can see that he's got 3 fixed bookings on these projects. But there's also this tentative booking for a retainer that the client hasn't yet renewed. So this would potentially be, as it's only a tentative booking, a good one to reassign to someone else. I'm going to click on this handy shortcut to the retainer project and open this up in a new tab. Now let's imagine Kevin is one of our developers, but Jane is another developer, and Jane has actually been working on this retainer up until now. And we can see that Jane has plenty of availability in August. So what we can do is create a tentative booking for Jane for the same amount that Kevin was on, so 10% of her time a day, and then readjust Kevin's booking. So he's now nicely in the green. So if the client renews their retainer at the end of July, Jane would be doing the first months of work, and then Kevin would take in from September onwards. If I now refresh our utilization report, we can see that Kevin is nicely in the green. So let us do a little quick recap of everything that we've just looked at, because we have covered a lot. We started with our quote. We converted our quote into a project in a few clicks, which created a number of tentative automatic bookings for us. We then adjusted the timelines of those bookings. We reviewed people's availability. If they were already project members, we could see their availability from here. But if they weren't project members, we can go to the utilization report, filter by a specific person or filter by a role, see who is best placed to take on the work. Maybe there are some conflicts arising, and if that is the case, of course, Scoro won't be able to automate those kinds of decisions. That will come down to your knowledge of your clients and your projects and their relative health and risks. It will be up to you to have any internal conversations to decide on what the priorities should be. And when the final decisions have been made in the case of any conflicts, you would then be able to agree on who's doing what and change these stripy tentative bookings into fixed bookings for specific people. And that means you will know that the right people are available at the right time when you need them, just like booking that table at the popular restaurant in advance. You'll be able to review the utilization report to get a team or a department overview to understand, is there enough billable work? Are we on track for a profitable future? And you'll also be able to get early insight if anyone has been overbooked, if there are any conflicts, so that you can optimize the workflows, sort things out before they become problems, and you don't hit that metaphorical iceberg. Remember, if you have any questions about anything that we've just looked at, please add them to the Q&A tab at the bottom of Zoom, and remember to check out the answers to other people, the answers to questions other people have asked as well. So next, I'd like to give you a sneak peek of our ultimate vision for bookings. Our team are currently busy working on this, and it is coming soon to a laptop near you in fall 2024. I have it on good authority by my American coworker, Maggie, that was a very authentic American accent, by the way. In a nutshell, we are going to have a dynamic portfolio company level view of all your bookings and all of your resourcing for every individual person and project in just one place. You'll be able to click on a link to bookings at the top in our top menu, and you will be able to see what each individual person is on, and you'll also be able to click on any of these bookings to get the breakdown, but also make adjustments. And herein lies the power of this portfolio view. If you remember from our demo, If you needed to make changes to bookings, although you could see everyone's bookings from the utilization report, you would have to click on the links to go to the individual projects and make the changes there. But with the bookings overview, you will be able to make those changes from this one place. You're not going to have to dip in and out of multiple projects. What we'll also be able to do in the overview is group it to look at certain roles. For example, I want to see all the designers and everyone in the design team and what they're up to, what projects they're booked on. We can also understand the placeholder availability. Remember, the designer placeholder, their availability is based on the remaining availability of all the other designers. Because Jerome and Hamish and Eric are 100% booked, that's why we're seeing no capacity for our designer over here. So if the question comes along that you've got this new urgent potential project, do we have any design time available? It is a very quick thing to answer, the answer being no. At least not unless we agree to take the designer off one thing and put them onto the new urgent thing that's come along. So, you know, we would need to reschedule these bookings that we've got in here for the same time period because clearly there's no capacity. We also have, apologies, I've skipped forward a little bit. Let me just go back to, no. It was never going to be the case that this would work perfectly from start to finish. Let's try that again. I'm just going to leave this running and pause when I get to the right point. The filters is the next thing that I wanted to show you. You'll see that you will be able to filter the bookings overview by any user tags that you've got set up, or by project status, or by project tags. I know a lot of you, particularly my clients, have got tags set up for internal versus client projects. So for example, you would easily be able to filter the bookings overview so that you're just looking at everything to do with client work and you're excluding any internal work. Imagine what a powerful tool this will be for your project planning meetings and resource planning meetings. You're going to get insight into who is overbooked. We can instantly see in this example that poor old Eric is not having a good May. He is highly overbooked. Jerome, on the other hand, he's only 50% booked. So maybe we could move some of Eric's work over to Jerome. So this really is one resource planner to rule them all. So off the back of all of this, if you like the sound of bookings and you want to start using it on Scoro, what will this mean for your current workflows? The three main ways you may be doing your long-term forecasting are potentially with Scoro and specifically using tasks and the Gantt chart in Scoro. Using an external system, so maybe spreadsheets or some other piece of software. Or nothing at all. I think there were maybe 8 people who weren't using anything at the moment, if I remember from our first poll. We'll quickly chat through each one of these, but before I do, no matter which scenario you identify with, it's really important that bookings only really works if the whole team gets on board. If you have some project managers using it and booking certain team members, but other project managers aren't, you're going to have massive gaps. You're going to have double bookings. You're going to have all kinds of drama. It's just not going to work. It will require everyone to use it for the whole team. But as you saw from the live demo, it's a pretty simple tool to get started with and a short learning curve. Let's talk through the first scenario. So if you are already using Scoro for your long-term resourcing, specifically tasks and the Gantt chart. Now, for any agency whose timelines are changing a lot for your projects, planning an entire Gantt chart in advance that might stretch, 3-6 months in advance, and then having to constantly update it when things change is quite a lot of admin, and it's not, the easiest thing to be doing. In this scenario, bookings could be a great and faster way for you to do your long-term resourcing. And what would change is that you would start to use bookings on Scoro. The second change is how you are currently planning out your tasks in Scoro. So you would no longer need to plan out the whole Gantt chart and all the tasks and continually update it. You can plan tasks on a more kind of short-term basis. So stuff that needs to happen in the next few weeks or month that, is unlikely to need replanning, for example. So bookings will give you your long-term utilization, and tasks become more short-term instructions of what specifically the team needs to do. But maybe you don't actually have much of a need to replan your projects. When you create your project, you set out your Gantt chart, you have all your tasks, and things don't really change. In that case, you're already getting your long-term utilization forecasting from what you're already doing. And you can keep using Scoro as is. You're not going to get any additional value from using bookings. In a nutshell, if your project timelines change a lot and you often need to replan, then bookings is going to be very useful for you. Our second scenario is if you are doing your long-term resourcing outside of Scoro, whether that's another piece of software or a spreadsheet. In this case, the habit of resource planning is already in place, which is fantastic. And that won't fundamentally change. It will be more of a system change. So you stop using what you're currently using and you start using bookings in Scoro. This will help to reduce the number of different tools that you're using and keep more of your data and key processes under one roof. And the third scenario, if you're not using anything, the workflow changes would involve starting using bookings on Scoro. But in addition to that, you would also need to implement the habit of resource forecasting in the first place. As we know, habits can be harder to embed than, training someone up on a new feature. But on the plus side, you're going to be able to get rid of that cloud in front of the iceberg. We've covered a lot today, so I'll just take a minute to sum up the key points. Bookings help you to plan people and projects, like reserving the table at the popular restaurant in advance. Bookings ensure you have the right people at the right time, and they're not double booked when you need them at a critical stage. You still need tasks on Scoro to tell your team what specifically they need to do and when. Reserving the table doesn't tell your waiter what you want to order. Likewise, you still need tasks in Scoro to tell your team what to do. Resource planning is important and beneficial in so many ways. It will help you to improve your profitability, control costs, gain visibility of your resourcing potentially quarters in advance, balance the team workloads, avoid hitting that iceberg, and keep your clients happy. Bookings on Scoro are a proactive, high-level and long-term approach to keeping on top of your resource planning. They make replanning easy. They're great for standardized projects. They are available in our Pro and Ultimate plans and will become even more powerful later this year when we have the bookings overview, that dynamic, editable view of all of your bookings in one central location. As our last poll for today, I would love to know your feedback so that we can continue to improve things. I'm just going to launch our poll. Okay, you should now see a pop-up on your screen. This time it's multiple choice. Please let us know if you intend to use bookings and think it will be valuable. You may, but you still need to see if it's a good fit. You will not. And also, with regards to the webinar, was it helpful? Was it easy to understand, or could it be improved? I'll leave this open. There's no time limit on it, so feel free to make your choices. That wraps up our webinar for today. In terms of getting any more help and support, we have a fantastic article in our help center with a short video and a step-by-step written guide on how to set up bookings for your company. But if you get stuck or need any additional support, then do get in touch with our support team, support@scoro.com. They are here to help. Finally, don't forget to follow Scoro on LinkedIn, and then you can keep up to speed with all of our upcoming webinars and events. We'll send you all of these links in the follow-up email along with the recording to today's webinar. And remember, if you've asked a question in the Q&A that our team haven't yet responded to, we'll get back in touch with you separately. That is it for now. So on behalf of myself and my wonderful team here, right, Dakia, Kadri, Maggie, and Tella, thank you so much for your time. We really hope that it was valuable and to see you again soon. Bye for now.